It was like our trauma bonding of being like, didn't get this job, hope we can pay our rent. Like, it was an identity that I had embodied of an identity of who I was as Tanya. I was always Tanya the dancer. I was never just me. I didn't know who I was without this thing that I did. I knew myself more from what I did than I knew myself as just being a person. I didn't know who I was without that identity. And entangled in that identity was how I believed life could be for me and how I believed life worked for me. And if I am Tanya the dancer, dancers don't make money.
Hello and welcome back to the Joyous Path to Millions podcast with me, your host, Emily June Wilcox. I am so excited to be joined today by Tanya Jane, and we are going to be diving into all things entrepreneurship, money mindset, etc. So Tanya, welcome to the show.
Yay! I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. And you also live in LA. So we were like chatting about what suburbs we live in and like just all the LA speak. But you have a way cooler story about how you got here. So could you just share a little bit about your background with everyone?
Yeah, totally. So I am originally from Sydney, Australia, and how I got to LA was I grew up in Australia training really hard in dance. That was my dream. I've always been kind of like an all or nothing type of chick, even when I was a kid. It was very like, this is what I want. And once I'm hooked on something, like I'm obsessed with it. And I have like no shame in my obsession game. I am super passionate, super driven, and like, once I am lit up by a dream or something that's motivating me, I am very quick to act on it and to go for it. And my biggest dream was to, obviously being in Australia and LA, being the place where all the artists are and all the TV shows are, and just watching it as a kid growing up, it was just like, this is what I want to do. This is who I want to be. And even in that moment, like as when I do reflect back on being so young and being so aggressive in my pursuit for my dream, it wasn't even, there wasn't pressure around it. There wasn't like, it has to happen by the time I'm 21 or it has to happen by this. It was a knowing. Like I just knew, oh, I'm going to make it happen. Don't know how, don't even care. I'll just figure it out. Like there was such like a carefree energy that like now I wish, it's easier to tap into when you're a kid, I guess, when you don't have to worry about anything else. But I was just like, oh, I just know it's going to happen. I can feel it. And I ended up making that dream a reality when I was 19 years old and got sponsored by an agency here in LA, which was like one of the best days of my life as a 19-year-old teenager. Ended up getting my work visa and moved over here. And I was very fortunate that I got to live that dream for over a decade. And even though I experienced a lot of success and I was able to turn all of those dreams into reality multiple times, very similar to your story that you shared on my podcast just before about your 100K month. Like I just experienced that moment of like, I did it. And then the next morning being like, oh my God, I need the next job. Where's the next thing? Where's the next thing? And it just was this vicious cycle that I was in for a decade. And I didn't even question it. Like not one part of me thought that that was a problem. It was very much in the energy of, it is what it is.
Yeah.
If I want to pursue this industry, then get over it. Like, it's hard. I'm going to have to struggle. I'm going to have to hustle. And in fact, I was even told that at 19 when I moved here, like, get ready. You're going to have to work so hard, which of course, like as with any dream, you're going to have to do the stuff. And there was this energy of you're going to have to hustle. You're going to have to struggle. It's a struggle in LA. It's a fight. And I just took that on and didn't even question it. And also my friendship circle at the time, we would laugh about how broke we were. Like it was like our bonding. It was like our trauma bonding of being like, didn't get this job, hope we can pay our rent. Like it was an identity that I had embodied of who I was as Tanya. I was always Tanya the dancer. I was never just me. I didn't know who I was without this thing that I did. I knew myself more from what I did than I knew myself as just being a person. I didn't know who I was without that identity. And entangled in that identity was how I believed life could be for me and how I believed life worked for me. And if I am Tanya the dancer, dancers don't make money. So I'm not in it for the money. And I don't care about nice things. And anything to get the dream, I'll eat ramen noodles. Like that was just my energy. And again, didn't question it until I did. Like until I was like, gosh, I'm so over it. Like I'm over it. And I think it also came with the year that I had my awakening, if you will. I turned 29. So now I'd been in LA for 10 years, about to turn 30. I'd just gotten engaged. This was 2021. And I had always placed like things outside of me being the savior. This job, once I work with this artist, that feeling is going to go away. It was never about money, to be honest, because I didn't even think I could even feel safety with money. It was about once I book this job, once I get this choreographer to like me, once I get this, then I'm going to feel better. And then when I realized that wasn't happening, then I hooked onto, I'm getting engaged this year because I knew it was coming. And I picked my ring and I was like very aware that we were getting engaged. And I was like, oh my God, when I get engaged, I'm going to be a new person. Like I just know I'm going to wake up, I have a ring on my finger. I'm now a fiance. Everything's going to be better. And obviously we know that's not how it works. And the high wore off about a week later after getting engaged. And that was where I like really had like the breaking moment of like, when's it gonna be enough? Like nothing is gonna fix this feeling. And I'm so fed up with my own BS and just accepting it. I'm like, I'm done. I'm done accepting it. I want a new reality and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Didn't know what that would be, but it ended up leading me to finding a coach. Actually, my first investment was a money program. The desire to level up came through the desire for a better quality of life, which to me was like, I want more money. I'm done accepting that I don't have enough. And that's really what led me that snowballed into me realizing, I'd been accepting this just by choice. And now I'm choosing something better. And life quickly got better. It was about 8 weeks that I went from struggling to pay my $800 rent to driving a brand new Mercedes off the lot. Like it was very quick that I started to manifest more money. And what I love about the beginning of my journey is obviously now I have my business, but for the first 6 months of doing mindset work and energy work and reprogramming my relationship to money, I was still dancing. I didn't even have my business. So it wasn't even like, I just now was selling my offers. Like, no, I just became a match to more. I raised the standard for my life, got elevated. And what I was tolerating got elevated. So then I was open and expecting more. And that's what I started to receive. And once I saw how good it was, I was like, I need to tell everyone. I need to tell everyone. That's how I started my business.
Oh, that's fascinating. Well, in my perception of the entertainment industry is that part of the exploitation is feeding off of and perpetuating feelings of like unworthiness and people pleasing. And so it's like the way that they do casting calls and everything else, like it sort of feels like it's all set up to make you feel like you're never good enough and that you should just feel so grateful to be chosen. And the pay's not good, but you'll accept that because you were chosen and like we saw something in you. And it's like, well, if you saw something in yourself and had different standards, I don't know. It's just, I'm curious if you have like thoughts and opinions about that.
Yeah, I have so many. So many. Now being out of the industry, because what was unique about my situation was I wasn't unique at all in my life. Like I grew up around a lot of really talented people who were all really driven, and it was always the dream came first. So moving to LA so young, even though yes, it was like fascinating, I guess, but like to me, it was like, well, I'm sure my friends are coming soon. Like we're all doing it. And in fact, they're all here, still working in the industry, very successful. So it was like this warped perception of what was actually happening because I never lived in a reality other than that. It was just, we all have skills, we all have talent, and we all put up with crap, and we all take shitty pay, and we all put ourselves in positions that are uncomfortable. And that's just what we do on a random Wednesday because it's just been it. And it wasn't until I started to step out of the industry that I started to kind of look back with a bit of a side eye. I was like, what spell was I under? Like, and it wasn't all bad, but you're very accurate. It was like, you go into these rooms and you give everyone outside of you the power. You walk and you want it so bad because it's laced with so much passion. And it's like when you dedicate your life to a dream, there's like I don't want to say you're desperate, but it's like the meaning behind this opportunity outweighs the finances. It's like, I just need to experience being on stage with J-Lo. Like, if I don't, then I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, it's like so big. It's like so blown out of proportion, but it's the passion behind it is so extreme. But then with the money aspect of it and being in LA, when you're on a work visa, so a lot of foreigners obviously come to LA because this is where the hub is for the industry. On our work visas, we can't actually work a normal job. So we are only allowed to work in the industry that we are on a visa for. So we can't get a bartending job, can't work at a coffee shop, like nothing. And the industry is already like hard enough to then not be able to support yourself in any other way. On one hand, it was a blessing because it made my drive so extreme. Not that it needed to be more extreme because it was already pretty high, but it made there be no other option, no other distraction. It was like, I will do what it takes. But then it added a very tangled situation with high passion and high pressure. So then the passion and the pressure, it started to not be fun. And it turned, for a long time, it wasn't fun. For a long time, it was just exhausting. It was like, I would not book a job and be heartbroken, but then also be so scared. How am I going to pay my bills? Like, it was just chaos all the time. And that was not the industry's fault. That was my mentality. That was me not having, not valuing myself and allowing these jobs or these moments to strip my power and to make I pedestaled everything. Every job, every person was bigger than me, So it wasn't until I started to do this work that I started to realize I was creating that reality and I was creating that experience for myself on a regular basis.
Yeah. So tell us more about that 8-week period where you went from barely paying rent to driving the new Mercedes, still dancing, right? Like still having the same source of income. What were you thinking? What were you feeling? How did more money find its way to you?
Yeah, it was so fascinating. And also, I'd always kind of been into manifestation. And I share this story kind of jokingly, but I read back through my journals. Like I have a few of them. I don't have all of them here from the 10 years that I was in just dancing, but I have from like 2016 onwards. And I was reading through my journals and I was doing the things, Emily. I was doing full moon rituals. I was writing down the goals. how do I feel? I'm doing all the things. But as soon as I closed that journal, I was feeling lack, thinking lack, being lack, living in frustration. She booked that job. Oh, of course she did. Like I was still me.
Yeah.
And I was trying to put the Band-Aid on and be like, but hopefully if I hope, wish and pray enough that it'll be easier. And what really changed is my thoughts. Like I stopped being that version. I stopped being that identity. And I started to embody a new identity, one where I was open to it being easier. I was actually open to maybe this could be more fun. I was actually open to, the universe isn't against me. I think I could, let's see. It was like very curious in my energy in the early phases of like this work. And obviously I had invested in a program. And the reason why I feel investing in yourself is it's special for so many reasons and life-changing for so many reasons. But for my specific identity shift that really created the ripple effect that came was the program that I invested in was, I think it was like a little over $2,000. And that version of me would never, like that was just so not who I was.
Yeah.
Like buying a new pair of Nikes was like making me sweat at the time. It was like, who do I think I am to like now spend $2,000 on a program, on energy, on money, mindset? Like what is this? What am I even talking about? The second I said yes and swiped the credit card, I became a different person. It like broke the link of my identity. I was no longer her because in that action, and again, this came like a day or two after that massive meltdown. So there was a high emotion. There was a high willingness for change. An opportunity presented itself. And I jumped through like the little time warp loop that was in front of me by swiping my card. And it like shifted something within me. There was confidence. There was like certainty now. I'm changing because I just made this action. And what happened and how it happened so quickly was this was June of 2021. So 2020, obviously the world was shut down and there was no entertainment industry. And then 2021, it was slowly coming back, but like very not. If you were working in the industry, you were like so lucky to like be on a show or something. And I think it was the next day or maybe 2 days later, but like pretty much right after that moment where I said, I'm ready to change and took the action. I got a DM from a choreographer who I'd never worked with, never even talked to, which is also a very strange opportunity.
Yeah.
And he basically was like, will you be my assistant on a new TV show if we start next week? And he told me the pay. And I was like, and then, so I instantly got this huge opportunity that was like 10x the amount of money that I would ever make as a dancer. And even while I was on that opportunity, I was like a magnet. It was like after that opportunity, the date was finishing, and then I got an email from my agent. Are you available for this? Are you available for this? And the jobs kept coming. And I also was like expecting it. I was like, let's see what else wants to come. So my energy opened up, and I just was a match for more. That's like the only way I can really say it.
Yeah. Well, I love the specificity of the examples because we need that. We really need that so that we can build our own evidence. And you could have been looking at people who weren't getting booked or all of the evidence that there aren't jobs, but it was like, why? Like you had a job, then the next one came, then the next one came. And so then you start to just anticipate and like, well, of course the next one is going to come. And you start building your own evidence that like, it's all working, it's all flowing. And so even though that was available as a truth the whole time, and so was the other thing, it's like your mind stops noticing the examples of lack and starts focusing on the examples of flow and abundance, and it's all working out. And then, of course, that amplifies.
Yeah. And what I feel like happened energetically was I honestly, Emily, like just became unavailable for anything else. Like the reality of being broke, the reality that I had lived in for 10 years, like repulsed me, like that's how it felt. I was like, I'm not even available I'm not available to have a conversation about lack of money. I'm not available to even laugh about, oh, look how broke. Nope, unavailable. Like the standard and the boundary around my identity and who I was now and what I wanted now was so rock solid because I was that fed up. And now I don't believe people need to get to rock bottom, but let me tell you, when you're there, it's like very easy to come right up because there's nowhere else to go. So I wouldn't even say it was rock bottom. Like thankfully I still had an apartment and was still okay to like live life. But yeah, energetically I was like only available for good and beyond. Like,
right. So yes to that. I do think often we need to have like a line in the sand moment where it's like, I'm not going back to that other way. I'm curious if you recognized at the time or just in hindsight, any nervous system repatterning or regulation that needed to happen, because it sounded like you were living in like relatively high stress and like with a fair bit of chaos. And as we know, like our body upregulates cortisol receptors and we get used to sort of that level of stress and chaos. And so it can almost feel normal. And then in the absence of that, like sometimes there's a readjustment that has to happen, like where things almost feel too easy or a little boring. And subconsciously there can be a part of you that kind of misses the thrill of like having your back against the wall. I don't know. Did you experience any of that?
Yes, I did. And in very interesting ways. So when I decided to start my business, I know like entrepreneurship is like a beast in itself, but from the world that I came from, I was like, I can just be me. And then like, no one's judging me. No, I don't have an agent telling me what I can and cannot do. I don't have someone judging my outfit. Like I can just be a personal brand, share my story and teach and make money. Like it honestly felt like a walk in the park. I was like, sign me up. Like I'm going to do this and put myself in the driver's seat of my life. And my first year in my business obviously still had a lot of that chaos. I wouldn't say it was chaos. It was nowhere near as bad as it was. But the first year in my business, it was almost like I swung so hard from like hyper masculine to like, I'm going to rest, because even just making a little more than I was as a dancer was like mind blowing to me. Like my like expectation for what was going to make me get by was not extreme. And I was going for my first 6-figure year, which happened and I did. And then right after that was really where I started to be like, nothing changed. Hit the first 6-figure year and like, cool. What did I think was going to happen? Like, I don't know. But it was kind of like, I already felt like I'd elevated a lot. So energetically, life did feel different. But it wasn't until I started making multi-six figures that I realized the pattern was still present in the way that I felt like I needed to show up in order to receive the money. So it was almost like I would notice myself, let myself wait a little too long to then get into a triggered state, to then force myself to create, to then push myself into a launch, to then receive the money. Instead of setting myself up for sustainable success, for recurring revenue, and for a business that actually supports me in my life. And it wasn't until middle of last year when we moved into this house, because I started my business in January 2022. So it was like a year and a half in, I was doing multi-six figures, and we moved into this house. And I was like, I had the realization, it was like a light bulb went on in my mind. I was like, I don't want to experience wealth like this anymore. Like now I know I can make more money.
Yeah.
Now I've gotten myself out of survival mode, and I have this beautiful life. Like I have this house, I have my dream car. Like I just got married. Like life is like doing really well. And I was like, I want to experience wealth where it's like my business actually supports my life. Like it's not, I need to fuel my business so I can get this paycheck. It's like, how can I change this? So my business is now raising the quality of my life. And that switch of how I wanted to now shift my experience of wealth shifted how I also structured my offer suite, and how I also decided to now structure my calendar and what was my priorities. And I started to really play the long-term game in my business instead of being like, what's the next launch? Like, what's the next offer? Because I need that cash injection. And it was now like, what's the 7-figure brand? And how can I set this up to be sustainable? And how do I want to feel while I create it? Because I don't have that fear that I'm not going to be okay anymore, because I know I can make money. Yeah. So that's not there. So I want to experience creating money in a very different way. So I don't know if that even answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. Tell me a little bit more about your business. Like, who's your ideal client? What does your offer suite look like?
Yeah. So my ideal client is a high achieving woman who is wanting to turn an impossible dream into the new normal. So whatever industry, whatever career that will be for them, I do work with a lot of obviously entrepreneurs who are starting their businesses and wanting to break free of a paycheck and create their own money and create their own wealth. But then I also do work with a lot of women who are in the creative field or who are athletes or who are pursuing a dream that feels very extreme or impossible, because I can definitely relate to that level of craziness a little bit of pursuing that. So that is the type of woman I work with, is someone who is very, very driven and has like a beyond average desire for life, like wants the epic dream, even though maybe no one in her hometown is even thinking it's possible, and actually brave enough to go get it and go do it. So the industry and the careers are very different, but the energy and the essence of the woman is always the same. And the way that I serve them is I have a few different offers in different tiers, depending on like the proximity. But my main program is called the School of Dreams. And that's really where it's a 4-month experience. And that's really where I break down like my process of what I did in the beginning, where I up-leveled my life, but refining that process again and again and again for each iteration of my own life, and basically taking them through their like belief and identity work into like confidence and personal power, manifestation energetics. And then my favorite topic is like the big dreamer lifestyle energetics, to not only hit the goal once, but to make it who you are. Like no more yo-yo, because I yo-yoed for a decade and it was fucking annoying. So we want to hit the dream and then hit the dream in a strong way. And the way that I kind of feel into this is I'll say things like, I used to manufacture manifestation. So going back into my old reality with dance, it would be like, oh, this is the job I want. Or I'd get myself to that triggered state where things were not good. Yeah. And then I'd be like, this is the job I want. Who do I need to be? How can I just be a good girl for like 6 weeks or 3 weeks to then get this gig or get this job? And I would manufacture me and be like, I'm going to class every day. I'm going to email my agent. I'm doing a photo shoot. And then I'd book the job, because when you put in the work, you will get success. Yeah. Very similar to your story. Like when you show up and you take the steps, you will get success. But who you are when you experience that success is going to end up being who you've always been. And who you've always been is not someone who can sustain that level, because you've manufactured the way you think, who you are, your habits, just to get a result. Right. Not because you want to have an incredible life where you have epic success and where you sustain this lifestyle. It was like out of panic of like, let me just quickly get the instant gratification to tell my nervous system I'm okay.
Right.
Instead of let me change my thoughts forever. Let me do this work, not just to get a gig or to get the new client or to get the 10K or to hit the 10K or whatever it may be. But let me do this work because it's who I am.
Yeah.
Let me invest in myself because that's my life. I will always be investing. I will always be learning. I will always be waking up and prioritizing me, not just to get the situation, but because it's who I am. So that's really the bulk of my work. And I teach that process in the School of Dreams. And then I have my mastermind called the Extraordinary Mastermind, and then one-on-one.
Nice. I love that. Well, and it kind of reminds me of like what you were saying about the version of you who lived in Australia, but like knew that she was going to move to LA and do this. And it was the knowing, because it was like that was who you were. And so that was an outcome that was congruent with who you were. And my husband and I did a program by a coach named Jim Fortin years ago at this point, but he talked about that with habits, where a lot of people, obviously, as we know, like their New Year's resolutions fail and things like that. Like they can do it for a short amount of time, but then it fizzles out. And he was like, the key piece is to ingrain it into your identity. And so if you just start saying to yourself, like, I'm just the kind of person who goes to the gym, that's just who I am, that's just what I do, then you don't really have to decide if you're going to go to the gym or not. Like, it sort of takes that willpower out of it because it's just who you are. So it's like the obvious outcome and there's no resistance versus you trying to be that version of yourself for 6 weeks to get the gig. It's like, yeah, you could do that for a sprint, but it wasn't ingrained into your identity because you weren't just naturally the person who was constantly booking a photo shoot and going to class every day. And so there was like some effort and probably some resistance involved with it.
Yeah, totally. And the biggest shift, and I still do this now, anytime there's like a new level, whether it be for money or client numbers or just anything in my life, could be like this house was like a huge manifestation. And still, we've been in here for over a year now, and I'll still wake up and be like, who let me in here? Who let me in this house? Like, I don't know how this is like a reality of mine. It's wild. And it's the shift in identity is like the biggest key in it's shifting how you now see yourself. It's raising your self-image, which then comes with like thinking different thoughts and feeling different feelings, but bringing all of that into the micro moments, because those big moments where we say yes to the investment or we say yes to the gym or yes to the New Year's resolution or whatever it is, the energy will fade. Just like we all know, like you will just wake up and be who you've always been by like week 2. But it's like now when the energy fades, can you still be thinking those thoughts? Can you still be feeling the excitement for the vision that you're bringing to life? And bringing that energy into how you're making coffee in the morning. What are you doing as soon as you wake up? How do you have lunch? Are you going to stay in your office all day? You're going to go on a walk, and you change up literally the way you are, like who you are in your life. And it's not drastic changes. Like the things that stack and make the biggest impact in my own personal experience has been the micro moments and who I am and the little split moment decisions that I make, and having the awareness. Like the biggest one for me was the grocery store and filling up my car with gas, because old me was always talking shit on grocery prices. And then the old me was also like dreading filling up my car with gas, but also like, what else was I going to do? It wasn't like I was going to fight it, or it was just, I didn't let myself even be grateful that I could. Like it was just this thing. And that was like the new energy and the new identity of, oh no, this wealthy version of me who lives a good life, who does make money. She's not going to the grocery store and filling up this beautiful cart of food and being pissed off when she has to pay for it. Like changing in that moment. Who am I? Who am I being in that moment? Am I being old self or am I being new self? And it was that again and again and again. And filling up gas, being like, oh, gotta fill up gas. No, who am I right now? Am I being old self or new self? These moments every day for as consistent as possible created a new wealth self-image and a new identity. And I became someone else. And that's honestly the same process I do now with like the next level. when I'm like playing with the 7-figure energy, I'm like, what would she do? What would that version of me do?
Yeah.
How's she showing up on social media? How is her branding looking like? What's her branding? How is she talking about her offers? How does she present herself? What's her morning routine? What is she eating? Does she work out? What workout is that? Like, I'm making it fun for me, which PS, it's Pilates. That's what the 7-figure me does. So I'm in my Pilates era and loving it. And I put on my matching set. I like walk out and I go to do Pilates and I let myself be the 7-figure me.
Yeah.
And to some, that's like, oh, that's not even that deep, but that's the work for me. It's the embodiment of the life.
Yeah, totally. I think often with manifestation, like people want it to be like a technique they've never heard, like something so out there that like just flips a switch and it's like, sorry, it's always a dial. It just is.
Yep.
And honestly, I really believe that a huge part of that is what our nervous system can handle. Because when you see people try to flip a switch, what always happens? There's a crash on the other side of it. And I've seen people on the internet that are like, I just had a 30K day kind of thing. And then I'm in a mastermind with them. And it's like the next month they're getting evicted. No joke. And it's like, no, that ain't it. But that's what happens when you try to make it a switch. Because it's like, well, the switch can go on, but it can also just go off. And it is that dial. And I love the examples that you gave because that is exactly what I have found to be true also. And it's an intuitive process. Like there's some stuff that really doesn't bother me. When I think about whatever, like next level of wealth version of me, I'm not really thinking about designer handbags, for example. And like, I don't know, maybe I will wake up one day and I'll want a designer handbag, but like, that's just never been me. It's never really like been my thing. And so I'm not having to like artificially manufacture that as like, oh, well, I need to get that in order to step into it. But like one day I just looked at our dishes and they were the dishes that were on our wedding registry. And thank God 14 years later, we're still married and like still love each other. And like we've outlived our dishes. A lot of them had little chips in them. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I looked at them and I'm like, no. Having chipped dishes is making me feel, it wasn't like broke, but it was just, I don't know. It was like, I just don't want to be the kind of person that's okay with having a bunch of cracked and chipped old looking dishes. So no, I'm ordering new ones.
I have a story for you and I think you're going to love it. On this topic of designer handbags, I just, what day is it? Last weekend, bought my first Louis Vuitton. And let me tell you, the battle in my mind to actually let myself do this was hilarious.
Yeah.
And it's a very similar situation was, and there's nothing against TJ Maxx, but my handbag, Emily, was a frayed $30 black handbag that I had for, I don't even know, maybe like 4 or 5 years from TJ Maxx. Yeah. And again, nothing wrong. It served its purpose. But it didn't bug me. I always knew I wanted this handbag. It was on my vision board. I was like, when I want this bag. First, it was when I get my first 6 figures, I'll get the bag. Obviously did that, didn't get the bag. Then it was when I make multi 6 figures, I'll get the bag. Did that, didn't get the bag. Then it was when I have monthly recurring 5-figure months, like consistently, then I'll get the bag. Been doing that for ages, didn't get the bag. And I just kept moving the marker. Yeah. I just kept like, when it feels more safe to spend thousands of dollars on something that I've been perceiving as not important, then it will feel safe to step into that identity that I've clearly been craving. And I just would not allow myself to get this damn bag. This year was the only time my old bag started to really drive me nuts. Like very similar to your dishes, like it's fine until one day you're like, I can't stare at that anymore. Like,
yeah, it's not fine anymore.
Not fine anymore. Like, I don't know where the line got crossed, but all of a sudden, like my bag repulsed me. I was feeling embarrassed walking around, like going to Pilates with my bag was fine until it wasn't.
Yeah.
And like, no one cares about my fucking bag.
Right.
But I did. Yeah. I was going to Pilates to embody this 7-figure me and step into my identity. And I'm doing all this stuff and I'm like hiding my bag. And then I'm feeling weird about it. And I was like, it's time to get what I actually want.
Yeah.
And this goes to like giving yourself that permission to unapologetically want what you desire. And for whatever reason, I had linked this I'd put this bag up on a pedestal and I kept saying, there's going to come a point in time where I'm just going to feel so safe in my body there's just overflow everywhere. And it's just going to be like pennies buying this bag, which sure, amazing. But like, I could have afforded it for years and I just would not allow myself to actually be her and be that version of me. And I finally got the damn bag and it was the best day, one of the best days of my life. I wouldn't say it was the best day, but it was one of the best. And I was just like, I can't believe I waited so long. But the lesson in that for me was like, it wasn't about the bag at all.
Right.
It was about my self-image.
Yeah.
And what would people think of me if I start carrying this bag? And if I start carrying this bag, but then my business stops doing good, like I can't carry a bag with a business that's not doing good 24/7. Like God forbid, like it was the weirdest linking of fear to this thing that was blowing me away.
Yep. I so get that. I love the story. Congratulations on getting the bag. And, you know, I've recently studied and done like a whole training on rapid resolution therapy. And one of the things that I've learned from that is anything that we go out of our way to avoid, unconscious mind perceives as a threat. And anything that we go out of our way to do, mind will begin to perceive as safe. And so it's like almost like the longer you avoided it, it's like the more the fear around it grew, because then it's like it wasn't just a handbag, it was a this and it was a that. And it was like, what will people think? Because mind just continued to attach more perceived threat because you continued to avoid it. And so it's like when you do that pattern interrupt and you intentionally move toward the thing, not only does it help you from like stepping into identity, but it's like mind then perceives that as safe simply because you're moving in that direction. And I just like find that perspective really fascinating because it helps us to like move toward the thing that we once avoided.
Yeah, totally. And what's interesting is once I had the awareness that there was this going on with, like, clearly it's no longer about, oh, let me just wait and get it. Like there's actually shit. Like I need to do some journaling. Like there's something here.
Yeah.
When I realized that, I obviously sat down, pulled out, started to really sit with it. And when I finally was just like, oh my God, I'm just going to get the bag and went through all my stuff, it was like instantly after buying it, I felt like a channel unlock, very similar to like the early story of swiping and saying yes to the investment. And instantly I felt different. I felt elevated. And like 2 or 3 days later, I had 3 people out of nowhere, wasn't even promoting one-on-one, DM me asking to work with me. When can I pay you? Like it was almost like it was like instant, the energy shift and the reflection of what my external reality became from who I became in seconds.
Yeah.
From finally just embodying a new level of me and a new level of wealth identity, what that meant for me and my brand and my business and how I see myself. Obviously, it's all self-image, but the impact it had was like instant again with the manifestations and the energy and what I was a match to.
Amazing.
Fascinating.
Rabbit hole, side note. So Jeff and I lived in Sydney for a year back before we had kids. And I was really blown away by just like the different vibe of Australia versus the US. And it kind of helped me to feel for the first time like how much like hustle culture is embedded in US culture. And I'm curious because obviously like you are very type A driven, then you're moving to LA, which LA, New York, Miami, probably like the epitomes of hustle culture within the US. Did you feel any of that?
In the beginning, like I remember people asking me, like when I first moved to LA, people being like, oh, is it different? And I was like, not at all. Like it's literally the same. Our McDonald's look the same, like the streets look the same, like the buildings look the same. And it wasn't until I started to get older when I would visit and it was my energy was so relaxed. Like I would even just boarding the plane and hearing the accent being like, we're going to be landing in Sydney, like just so aggressive, this Australian accent. I was like, it was like my nervous system would be like, calm, like, oh my God, I'm going to be like relaxing. I can relax now. So I could feel the energy shift that has a lot to it. It was probably like, oh my God, I'm going back home to mom and dad. Like everything's going to be okay. Like LA's so scary and struggle, bus, left, right, and center. So there was like all of that attached to it. But it was like little things I would notice. The grocery store, like people at the grocery store were like happy, relaxed. No one was rushing.
Yeah.
The energy and the culture was very chill. And now when I go back, I'm like, I don't know if I could move back to Sydney. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's so beautiful. It's so amazing. But I'm like, I don't know if it's maybe too slow for me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just fascinating. Like part of my sense of it is that I think because there are like more social safety nets and that kind of thing, like I don't think people really are in survival mode as much. And so it's like, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's like when you're in survival mode and you think like your basic needs aren't being met, like there really is no opportunity for not self-actualization, pursuing pleasures, passions, like any of that kind of stuff. And, you know, it's all kind of a scale, but I do feel like the US, it's like a lot of people are like one health crisis away from bankruptcy and that kind of thing. And it's like, in Australia, well, that would never happen because your health is taken care of and there are like systems in place for that.
Yeah, no, it is very true. Like there's moments where I will like be doing something, whether it's like, oh, I need to renew my health insurance or we're trying to figure something out that's like in that realm. And I'll like get so frustrated and I'll be like, that's it, we're moving back. And in that moment, I'll like play around with that idea. But it is very true. And I've always kind of known this. Once I did move, I realized that it is very easy to live a very good life in Australia. Like pay is great. You could literally work at McDonald's and make very good money. Very good money. Like one of my friends, like I don't think they do this anymore. I feel like the laws changed, but it was so fascinating that minimum wage job. My friend worked at like a bakery and minimum wage was like $18 or $20 for like, this is 12 years ago or something, maybe longer.
Yeah.
$18 and $20 for a high school kid. Like for someone who was like 18. And then Saturdays, a time and a half.
Oh my
so
gosh.
she would be getting $28 an hour. And then Sundays, every Sunday was double time. So she was getting nearly $40 an hour for being a baker. Like not even a baker, but just for doing the cashier.
Cashier.
Same thing at McDonald's.
Yeah.
Yes. Same thing at McDonald's. Same thing at the grocery stores. So if you're working your Sunday shift at Ralph's here, like they would be getting $40 an hour back home. Like they were making good money. And obviously the health system, like there's no, it's free and it's covered. So I was like, once I really kind of linked the thing, I was like, wow, it is easy to live a good life. But I also feel like the desire to have an extraordinary life isn't as high there because there's no need. Like this is like the good to great conversation. It's kind of scarier to let go of good to go to great. But when you're in a shitty situation, it's like, let's just see how good I can make it.
Right.
But if life's easy and fine and you're making good money and your house is nice and you don't need to pay for your doctor, like why would you strive for more? So that energy I don't relate to because like that part of the culture is like very different.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And even growing up in small, rural, like Southwest Michigan, we found out, you know, like I grew up not too far from where your husband grew up. I have a similar relatability gap where it's like when I go back, it's like most people are still working the same job that they were working 10 years ago. And it's like everything is like very linear. It's very like laid out for them. You might not love your job, but it's like everybody just kind of grumbles about work. And that's like part of the way that you relate socially. And I'm like, this isn't me. I could only talk to you guys for so long and hang out for so long. And then I got to get back to my people, like the people who do have big dreams and are doing interesting things. And like, I don't know, maybe it's just that desire for like more change, more momentum, more movement.
Yeah. And, you know, I've had this conversation with a few people who like will come into my world either from that reality and they're like craving something more or something bigger or whatever it may be. And I always have this perspective on it because my parents, and I'm sure your family, like they live that life that's very like they had their 9-to-5s, they made good money, life was fine, they never desired or craved something extra, and they were happy, they were living just fine. Like they are so happy with that. And there's never anything wrong with that type of life, right? Or that reality where you are paycheck to paycheck or not paycheck to paycheck, but like you have your 9-to-5 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And when someone comes into my world, there's like sometimes this energy of like, fuck that reality, you know, like I want the better one. Yeah. And it's not really that at all. It's not really that at all. And I always say, I'm like, it's two different games.
Yeah.
You don't want to ask someone in that reality, like you wouldn't want to ask someone who has a 9 to 5, should you pursue entrepreneurship? Because that game they're playing is like, they're playing chess and you're playing Monopoly.
Yeah.
Like, and they're really good at that game and they're happy with that game. And you're wanting to play a completely different game and ask the rules from someone who's playing another game.
Right.
Like, it's not going to link, which is why these type of things like podcasts and the work you do and what we do and giving people these conversations is so crucial and valuable for someone who wants to play the other game.
Yeah.
Because this is where you have to come to actually plug into that energy.
Yeah.
And it's not good or bad. There's no right or wrong. It's just different.
Yeah. I totally agree. It is just different. And for a long time, I was honestly like, I'm the messed up one. Like, why can't I just do the normal freaking thing? Like, that would be so much easier. Like, if I could just be chill with the 6-figure corporate job and just the retirement is auto drafted from the paycheck into the retirement account. Like that. Why do I have this like need for more? But like you said, it's a different game. And I think for me, it was like a reconciliation of like just being at peace with the fact that my soul came here to play chess, not Monopoly, period. Not because it's better, but that's just like what is inside me to do. And trying to make it anything else is not going to be satisfactory. It's not going to feel correct. It's not going to feel good.
Oh my God. It's so funny. Like the other day, it was like a few days ago, I was like, I got the hit for like the next level energy that I want to play in, the next level life, the new phase of my business I want to like start building. And I was literally in the shower and it all hit. And in that same moment, I was like, I could also feel my nervous system be like, ew, like, here we go again. Like,
yeah, do we really have to?
Like, I literally like put my hand up on the shower. I was like, oh man, like I know what's coming. And I was like, gosh, this drive to be great, Tan. Like, geez, can you just chill for a moment? But also like, it's so exciting. Like,
yeah.
And I say in my world a lot, like, you can tap out whenever you want. You get to have these check-in moments with yourself. Like, is it worth it? Is it worth it to do what you know you need to do and become who you know you need to become? And when I was in the dance industry, I had to ask myself that like on a daily basis because I was sometimes getting into some low moments being like, my mom actually would ask me, she'd be like, is it still worth it, Dan? Like, do you want me to just fly you home? And I was like, how dare you question the dream? Like, of course it's worth it. And now even in my business, like in the hard moments, the challenging seasons when shit's not working or even worse, when things are working and you don't like it anymore, it's like you can feel the excitement for the next level, but you can also feel the fear of like what's going to need to go, what's going to need to change to actually do that. And even simple things like raising your rates. It's like, also followed by, oh God, now I got to hold my new standard. You know, it's like, is it worth it though? Is the dream worth it? Is that vision worth it? And if it's ever a no, it gets to be a no and that's fine. But if it's a yes, then you know what you got to do.
Truly. Okay. So how can people listening connect with you, follow you, learn more about what you do?
Yeah, so I play on Instagram the most, and my Instagram is at the Tanya Jane. I also have a podcast that Emily just did an incredible episode on called the Big Dreamers Bible Podcast. And I'm really on Instagram the most. I have my School of Dreams and my mastermind and one-on-one available. And if anything in that realm interests you or excites you, you can DM me, and I'm happy to put you in a direction that I feel would be best for you.
Amazing. Tanya, thank you so much for coming on the show. To everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning in. I absolutely loved hanging out with Tanya. I feel like she and I were just like instant besties and we could have talked forever. So please go give her a follow on Instagram at the Tanya Jane. And here were my top takeaways from today's episode. Number 1, the transaction starts the transformation. When she made that investment in herself, that was the beginning of embodying that new identity and completely changing her life. Number 2, sometimes getting what you want doesn't feel the way that you thought it would feel. She was having all of the success, achieving all of her dreams, dancing with some of the biggest names in the business in Los Angeles, and yet she wasn't feeling as fulfilled or as satisfied as she thought she was going to feel. Number 3, everything can change so quickly when you decide you are no longer available for the old way. that line in the sand, that decision that everything is going to change and that there's no going back. Number 4, the question, which identity are you embodying? So are you making a decision based on the version you want to become or based on the old version of yourself? And then number 5, taking those micro actions. So noticing and moving in accordance with that identity that you're working towards. And it's not always the big things. It's not always buying the luxury purse or driving the Mercedes or even buying new dishes. A lot of times it's just those little things, choosing a new thought, choosing to react differently in a situation. And when you string those things together, that's what makes your life. And that completely changes what your life looks like and how you feel in it. So as always, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for making this a top-rated global podcast. I have got some great episodes in store for you, so make sure you tune in for next week. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. Changing the way that we think, feel, and talk about money is up-leveling the planet. I truly believe that. The ripple effect starts with you tuning in, and it spreads when you share this show on Instagram and Facebook. You can tag me at mmakesmoney. And you know what moves the needle the most? Taking just a minute to leave a 5-star review on iTunes. This show isn't free to produce, so let's multiply those dollars invested and help this show reach a bigger audience each week. So thank you in advance for your help. I really appreciate it. And until next time, I'm sending you all the magic money vibes on your joyous path to millions.